USA Patriot Act, which is the most difficult part and the biggest responsibility and challenge that we face in our field, actually. Of course, the Patriot Act, the word patriot, is a short form of uniting and strengthening America by providing appropriate tools required to intercept and obstruct terrorist act. And that's where the Patriot, so it's USA Patriot Act. So that's how, so Patriot is not just the word, it is the first letter of all this statement. Okay, so the main objective of the law is actually from that long form, which is uniting and strengthening U.S. by providing appropriate tools required to intercept and obstruct terrorist activity. It strengthened money laundering laws and the Bank Secrecy Act, a section of the USA Patriot Act which is referred to as Title III is called International Money Laundering Abatement and Anti-Terrorism Financing Act of 2001 and contains the AML-related provisions. Regulations issued under the USA Patriot Act by the U.S. Treasury Department provide the detailed requirement that financial institutions must follow to comply with the provisions of that act. Of course, we always call it the Section 300. So we have Section 311, 312, 313, 314, 319, B, 25. I mean, it's all this. I just give you some select sessions. You do not need to memorize that, but the important ones are those here. So the implication for the U.S. institution and non-U.S. institutions that do business in the U.S. is clearly the main focus of the U.S. Patriot Act. The key provisions arise from the premise that international access points to the U.S. financial system must be controlled. So if you have an access to the U.S. financial system, you must be controlled, right? Due diligence, controls, monitoring, risk assessment, as whatever we have been discussing a while ago on our clients, they are doing it on us. Covers a wide range of AML CTF provisions affecting foreign businesses, including Section 311, special measures, Section 312, CDD, EDD for foreign correspondent account, private banking accounts. Section 313, prohibition, correspondent accounts for shell banks. Section 314A, sharing information between government and FIs, financial institutions. Section 314B, voluntarily sharing of information between financial institutions. Section 319A, forfeiture from U.S. correspondent accounts. Section 319B, records related to correspondent accounts of foreign banks. And of course, we have Section 317, it's the US long arm law as well. So these are the main sections that would affect us in the exam and in real life as well. These are the main sections that we need to actually know by heart. So these ones, you need to know which section talking about what. Okay? So again, a flashcard. Financial institutions and businesses in other countries must recognize the extraterritorial reach of regulations enforced by the U.S. Department of Treasury, Office of Foreign Asset Control. See, how did they call it? The extraterritorial reach. That means, although we are sitting there in the US, we are reaching you here in your territory. And that's again supporting the Section 317, which is the US long arm law. We have a very long arm to come and reach you wherever your territory is. Okay? The OFAC, which is actually clear from its name, Office of Foreign Asset Control. They didn't say Office of All Asset Control. No, it's Office of Foreign Asset Control. So actually they're controlling your assets, right? That office is mainly an office part of the US Department of Treasury to monitor and control the foreign assets. Talking about the Palermo Convention, we said money laundering is about assets rather than only cash. So that office is mainly the office to monitor and control all the foreign assets. To control the access to the US system. Okay? OFAC administers and enforces economic and trade sanctions. Not only economic sanctions, even trade sanctions they do. And that's why when they tell you that you are violating the US law, they have the right to blacklist you, they have the right to prevent your access to clearing the US dollar, they have the right to prevent you from using the US dollar, they have the right to disconnect you from the international financial system. These are tools, sticks at the hand of the US Department of Treasury. Okay? That's how they enforce their laws and how they use the US long arm law. So based on the US foreign policy and national security goals against targeted foreign countries, terrorists, international narcotics, traffickers, and those engaged in activities related to the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. Sometimes in the exam you will see WMD. WMD stands for weapons of mass destruction. So if you read WMD, don't get confused. It's weapons of mass destruction. And here, of course, best example for this, you will put Iran, because they had a law called CISADA, CISADA, which is mainly tackling Iran, that nobody should deal directly or indirectly with Iran and support their nuclear program or their energy program. And if you do, we will do 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever I was telling you before, that we can blacklist you, we can disconnect you from the international financial market, we can prevent you from clearing the US dollar, we can prevent you from using the US dollar, we can provide lots of economic and trade sanctions against you, against your country, or against your financial institution if you are violating.
But is there any effectiveness test regarding all the US sanctions that has been done on Iran? Iran still is...
I don't want to comment on this because, again, this matters. I would see it from my point of view more of a political thing rather than anything else. So that's why I don't want to go into details into this. At least we don't want to put ourselves into trouble. But that's why even I respect most of the regulators in our region, that we are not actually putting OFAC as a must blacklist. We always go with the United Nations. That's an international list. But let's face it, United Nations list is always an outcome of OFAC. So the name will appear on the OFAC. After 2-3 days, it will appear on the UN list. But lots of names on the OFAC are not on the UN. Why? Because these are persons or entities or countries that have, I don't want to say a personal problem, they have a conflict with the US. They may not have a conflict with the European Union. They may not have a conflict with the rest of the world. So anybody the US perceives as non-cooperative or not happy with them, they will put them on the list. That's how it is. So not everybody on OFAC is bad, actually. That's why, for example, if the name is on the OFAC and it's not on the EU or the UN, you can deal with them in a foreign currency, like euro, for example. So that's okay. But if the name is on the UN list, that means everybody's saying that it's a bad person. So, yeah, of course. In our company, in ACC, we are providing more than 850 international blacklists. We have the list of Luxembourg, Singapore, Japan, many international lists. We have a total of 850 blacklists. Even in the US, we don't have only the OFAC. We have the OFAC, we have the Homeland Security, we have the SEC, we have the FBI list. So all these are American lists also, that they are different from the OFAC itself. In UK, the same thing, Homeland Security, the FCA list, the Bank of England list. They have lots of lists. So internationally, totally, we have more than 850 blacklists. That's why, as I said, every 8 hours we have an update, because one of the lists will be updated. So we have to update our database. OFAC doesn't get updated every 8 hours, but our list gets updated every 8 hours because of having all this number of lists. Somewhere or another, there is an update on one of these lists. That's why we make an update or refresh every 8 hours. That means 3 times per day we have an update on our international lists. So OFAC administers and enforces economic and trade sanctions based on the U.S. Foreign policy and national security goals against targeted financial countries, terrorists, international narcotic traffickers, and those engaged in activities related to the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. Many of the sanctions are based on the United Nations and other international mandates, are multilateral in scope and involve close cooperation with allied governments. Right? So, again, the OFAC is something which is having a good power to monitor all the foreign assets, and they do issue sanctions, and they do fine, those who violate the U.S. Requirements. Yes. The other question?
No, I just wanted to mention that sanction on Iran is not on everything.
Not on everything, of course. Any sanction in the world has exceptions.
On food, stuff,
Of course.
and medical equipment.
Specified.
It's only what sanction is related to the شو يسمونها
Nuclear.
yeah.
Power. Iran power program. برنامج الطاقة الإيراني. But not on everything, I agree. Every sanction is like this. Even if you look at all the other sanctions, every sanction, if you print it or if you go through it, you will find certain, things specified. But you need to read it and understand it. This is the most important, not to do any violation. So sanction doesn't mean that you are sanctioned. Not a single country, like for example, and the general rule, in all sanctions, they don't prevent or they don't ban any humanitarian elements. Medical, humanitarian rights, this part is always an exception for any sanction. So the sanction doesn't mean that you cannot touch the country, but you have to deal within the boundaries or the requirements of that sanction, or within or in compliance with the sanction program, just to put it in proper words. Yeah? OFAC rules prohibit transactions and require the blocking of assets, so clear, and that's why I'm putting it in red, blocking of assets, or of persons and organizations that appear on one of a series of lists that OFAC issues periodically. If you go to the OFAC, you will find the Cuba sanctions, you will find the Russian-Ukraine sanctions, you will find Sudan sanctions, Syria sanctions, whatever. These are different lists. And then you find SDN list, specially designated national list. You will find different types of lists. So there are lots of programs under OFAC. However, it's more user-friendly if you compare it to the United Nations, because the United Nations, if you don't really know the list, you could end up with a no match, or you don't really know if that person is blacklisted or not. So OFAC is, although it has more than one list, but it's more user-friendly as compared to the United Nations list, which requires more and more efforts to know who's blacklisted and not. Especially designated national. Yes. SDGT, Specially Designated Global Terrorist. You will not find it here, but I'm just, as part of my explanation. So SDN, Specially Designated Nationals. Okay?
With the kind of institution.
So here, they say all US persons must comply with the OFAC regulations.
Yeah.
Including, second part, all persons and entities within the United States. So if somebody in the United States, even if not US citizen, will be...
Of course. Even outside the United States. Not only in the... Even outside the United States. So, as I said in the morning, or in the previous, I think yesterday, if you are dealing in the US dollar, if you use the US dollar, the US has the right to prosecute you under the US law and take you to the US courts because you're using the US dollar. Using dirham, they still can reach you, but as I said, based on something else. But using the dollar, they have the right to apply the US law and take you to the US courts. If you're using the dirham, they can do some other things. Right? It's of course lesser than using the dollar. Using the dollar, that means you are abide by the US law because you're using their own currency. And that's why sometimes when we mentioned yesterday about the applicable, which law to apply, if they are using the US dollar, they will insist on applying the US law. And they have the right to take you to the US courts. And that's more tough. That's why we always say that the US dollar is the most risky currency. Right? If you use dirham, you may have some room for negotiation, but if you use the dollar, if you're doing everything correct, you're fine, of course. But the correct is also relatively correct from whose point of view, right? Like for me, when I look at the names on the OFAC list, I do have my reservation on that, right? Not everybody on the OFAC is bad, but it's at least it's bad for the US, but not bad for the whole world, right? So, but again, can you say that, okay, because this is your issue, I will deal with them? You cannot, right? But do you agree with every name on the OFAC? For me, if you ask me personally, I don't, right or no? We all know it. But if you tell me the name is on the UN, that's something else. As I said, if, for example, you are OFAC blacklisted, you are not UN or EU blacklisted, you can operate easily in Europe and in different currencies, but you cannot touch the dollar. However, as I said, there is a sort of twisting arms. So the US banks will say, okay, as a bank, you are dealing with somebody who's OFAC blacklisted and you have a correspondence relationship with us. So there will be a twisting arms. Same what they did with Ibn Amr. It was a twist arms, okay? First of all, Ibn Amr lost their US correspondence. Why did the Ibn Amr use the EU correspondence? Because the US bank said, okay, we will not deal with any bank dealing with Ibn Amr. Then, that's it. And that's why I said the US long arm. We have the power, so we can twist arms. So, again, it is, I mean, regardless of what we see about this, but as I said, they do have, because the dollar now is the most widely used currency worldwide, and that's why the main countries that are under the sanctions, like, Russia, like Iran, they try now to do transactions based on their own local currencies, like the Russian ruble or the Chinese yuan, or, because they want to get out of the sanctions, because the sanction is really disconnecting them from the international financial system. The US persons must comply with OFAC regulations, including all US citizens and permanent resident aliens, regardless of where they are located. They love the word aliens, I don't know why. NRA, non-resident alien, permanent resident alien. So as far as you're not American, you are an alien. All persons and entities within the United States and all the US incorporated entities and their foreign branches. Okay? So these people, they must comply with OFAC regulations. Sanction list screening, sanctions. In order to conduct a business with, the FI must determine that the customer does not appear on the sanctions list provided by a government or international body. And that's why we normally, when we deal with banks, we provide them two types of feed. The first feed is, which we call it the sanctions feed. And the other feed, we call it the blacklist feed. You tell me what is the difference between sanctions feed and blacklist feed. The sanctions feed is, I take the main lists, OFAC, UN, EU, Bank of England, and I can take the local list. If I'm doing a transfer today, online, I will check online again as a sanctions feed. I do not need to check against 850 international blacklists. I don't care about the list of Japan or Singapore or Luxembourg. If I cover those 4 or 5 main lists, I'm good to go. At the end of the day, if I'm doing an offline screening for my customers, part of my due diligence, it's good to know that if this customer is blacklisted in Luxembourg, right or no? But is it important for me when I'm processing a transfer? No, covering the main sanctions is more than sufficient. Not to create a queue, because if you check the name against 850 international blacklists, how long it will take for the SWIFT message to leave the bank. It's not practical. You got the point? So, البلاك بقى 850 international blacklists, including طبعا the main, the 4 or 5 main blacklists, but includes others like the IRS, like the FBI, like the Homeland Security, Luxembourg, Japan, Singapore, Thailand. I mean, all these kinds of lists, whether it's regional or country-wise. Yeah, they normally take from us for an offline checking, but for an online, that's why we always provide two feeds. One for online, one for offline. The online is the major 4. Offline at the end of the day. يعني مش يعني I'm not checking for a swift transfer online. Offline, like at the end of the day, there is no transaction. I just want to know my existing customer base. Is there anybody blacklisted somewhere? That's all. I'll get an alert, then I need to take a decision. Would I feel comfortable dealing with somebody who has a case, let's say, in Cayman Island or no? You need to take a call on that. But if somebody is blacklisted on OFAC, I cannot do the transfer. That's different. Right? But if he's not blacklisted on OFAC, UN, EU, Bank of England, and he is blacklisted in Cayman Island, if you did the transfer, nothing wrong will happen. You got the difference? But as part of my due diligence, I would want to know the people. That's why even we don't provide only blacklist service, we provide also media search. So you could be clear on all the blacklists, the 850. But there is some negative or adverse media against you, that you were, convicted in fraud, or there is some bad news about you. It's also good to know, right? So again, that's why I said, KYC is something and due diligence is something else. So as part of my due diligence, I may extend to checking the adverse media, the negative media, or to check some local blacklists, right? But as basic requirements is the 4 international blacklists, because I'm dealing mainly with US dollar, I'm dealing with the euros, I'm dealing with sterling pound, and of course I'm under the umbrella of United Nations as per my local regulator and of course the international regulations. So covering the 4 sanctioned lists is more than enough for an online perspective, but for a due diligence perspective, I may want to seek more and more information. The more, as I always say, information is always a power. The more information you have, the proper decisions you will take. The less information you have, most likely the decisions may be wrong. If you don't know a certain fact, you may have a problem. Like for example, one of the cases I had here was with DMCC authority. They hired us. They said there is a customer who came to open a company, and that company mainly was under DMCC, but they will offer financial services, so they had to go and get approval from ESCA, Securities and Commodities Authority. So they were offering financial service, and DMCC is not a financial service regulator, so they said, okay, to get you this license, you have to get an approval from Securities and Commodities Authority to be able to get this license. The compliance director of DMCC at that time, he said, well, I feel that the guy, there's something wrong. They checked, of course, they have an access to blacklist. They checked the blacklist, the guy is clean. They hired us to do excess due diligence on the guy. Because we have an office in Cayman Island, we checked Cayman Island and we found that the guy is convicted in a fraud case. It was like a Ponzi scheme, but in Cayman Island. And we could get the documents from the court showing this case. We provided it for the DMCC authority. When they confronted the customer, of course, they didn't tell him about what information they got, but they asked him, do you have any problem anywhere? Do you have any cases open or anything anywhere? The guy said no. And that was a false representation. When they showed him the evidence that you have an issue there, he said, yeah, but the court decision is not yet final and we are appealing. Okay, but why didn't you disclose it? Yes, it was not final, I agree, but there is something happening and there is a court order and you still need to appeal. So what did they tell him? I told him, okay, fine, you have to wait till the court order is final. If you are proven innocent, you are more than happy to come and work with us. But if you're not, then sorry, we cannot start a relation. Of course, the guy went and he never came back. Was he on any of the lists? No. But how did we reach that? Through the adverse media. And when we started catching the first tip of the thread, we started walking behind and we could get the evidences that this guy really has cases locally somewhere in the world. That's always happening. Yeah? So due diligence, as I said, is far more than the basic KYC requirement. You could do lots of additional steps. And again, you apply risk-based approach. You don't do that for everything. Like if you are hiring, for example, a key senior level, you would want to go and do a thorough background check. If, for example, you're hiring a CFO or a CEO or a board member, a key employee position, I would need to take more steps, due diligence steps, as compared to just hiring a talent, for example. Right or no? you would need to apply a risk-based approach because that position is more risky. That means I need to do an enhanced due diligence rather than just a normal due diligence. Politically exposed persons, and again, please, this is not blacklist. This is a list of the political affiliation. The FI must determine whether the customer currently or has previously held a government position that meets the statutory or organizational definition of a PEP. And we mentioned, as per the US perspective, there is a domestic PEP and there is a foreign PEP, and we mentioned the difference between both of them. Negative media, or sometimes they call it adverse media, which I was just explaining a while ago that we also provide. It's a determination must be made as to whether the customer appears in media publications in a negative manner that a financial institution considers to be an AML CTF risk. Let's say you made a search and the search revealed that this guy has a connection to some drug cartel. Would you be comfortable or not? You need to take a decision. Yeah. We provide that. I mean, we have access to all paid medias. So we can get you any information on the public domain we can provide. And that's why some people, they say we rely on Google for media search, and that's the worst source of information, the worst. And many people, they disagree with me, and then at the end I prove it to them, a very simple thing. Do we need water to be alive? Yes. Using Google for due diligence is like drinking from the fire hose. You need water, but if you stand in front of the fire hose and try to drink, you will not. It's water, but it will kill you. It's too much information, exactly. So you need a filtered information, the information that you need to look at based on which you can form a proper decision. But doing a Google search will not let you this. Plus, Google Spider will not reach to paid websites. It will not be able to get you information from any website which is paid. So Google, even although it's a fire hose, it's not even getting you that information that you would want to get. That's why Google is the worst source of due diligence information. Yeah? So the negative media is a feed that we provide to bank as a service to be able to provide them the due diligence information for them to form or to take the right decisions. Any questions so far?
In the sanctions, the different types of sanctions are there. Like in the materializing, they focus on different types of sanctions, targeted sanctions, comprehensive sanctions.
Yeah, it can be targeted financial sanction, it can be comprehensive sanction. There are lots of sanctions because you already have in the FATF 40 recommendation, also you have recommendation 35 talking about sanctions as well. Yeah. And this is the summary. Okay, this is the summary as we mentioned. So FATF, regional FATF bodies, you have Basel Committee, you have the European Union, you have the Wolfsburg, you have the Egmont Group, and you have the USA laws. And each one, what is the important topic? Who are the members? The topic, the document, and whether it's mandatory or not. You can see only the exception, which is mandatory, is the EU. And that's not mandatory for us. It's mandatory only for the European Union countries. But for the US, it will again be no. For us here, in our part of the world, it will also be no. So, and that is the major weakness here, that most of the international standards are optional. They are not mandatory. They are not enforceable. And that's where the weakness lies. And that's until we do something regarding this and try to enforce things, I think we are going to face some challenges. The question, as I said, it will ask you about what's mandatory, what's not. I mean, what is who are the members of each one of them? What is their objective? Remember the same 5 questions that I asked you at the beginning. Yeah, it's a summary of the whole chapter, actually. This is a summary of all what we have been discussing today and yesterday in one slide.
For these 40 recommendations, we told that 40 recommendations are binding for the members.
Members only. I'm putting no because, as I said, like if I said 40 recommendations are binding only, it will be no. Binding for members, yes. So that's why, unless I specify for members, it's not binding. So recommendations only are not binding. You got the point? So unless they clearly specify, explicitly specify that the recommendations are they binding for member countries, The answer is no. So, and it's from the name itself, recommendation. It's not regulation. It's not directive. It's not laws. So it's a recommendation, right? So that's why I said you need to know the group, you need to know the members, you need to know the important document that they issued, you need to know the topic and what they have been discussing, and you need to know whether it's mandatory or not, as we mentioned at the beginning. Okay? So for a quick review, the FATF was established in 1989. Who are the members, countries? What is their objective? Spreading the AML message. What are they issuing? Recommendations. Is it mandatory? No. Is it mandatory for member countries? Yes. Anything else mandatory for member countries except recommendations? No. Typologies are not. Papers are not. And we move to Basel. Who are the members? Central bank governors and the heads of the supervisory authorities in countries where central bank does not have a formal supervisory responsibility. Is it mandatory? No. What are their objectives? Is actually risk management, bank operations. What do they issue? They issued papers, right? If you talk about Wolfsburg, who are the members? Largest 13 banks. Were incorporated in the year 2000. Is it mandatory? No. They issued principles and statements. 2 principles and the rest were statements. So the main principles are private banking and correspondent banking. And they issued many statements like the suppression of financing of terrorism. They issued monitoring, screening, and searching. They issued lots of other statements. And the most important thing that they have highlighted is the concept of the UBO, or the ultimate beneficial owner, where we mentioned that the fact that the person on whose name the account is opened is not necessarily the same, the person who is controlling these funds, or who is ultimately entitled to such funds. So that's why we are required to identify and search for the UBO, or the ultimate beneficial owner.
Regarding your question about mandatory or non-mandatory,
Sure.
From which perspective you are addressing this?
I'm addressing it based on, like if we talk, as I said, about the FATF, as such, it's not mandatory except for the member country.
No, but my question is, the question that you are raising, from which perspective you are raising?
Whether it's mandatory to me as a country or no. So I would need to ask myself, am I a member country or not?
But I think what I am trying to understand here, because the colleague need to answer some of these ACAMS question related to the law.
Yeah.
Some of them related to other enforceable means.
Sure.
And some of other also is related to norm of the banking practice.
Sure.
Now I think for them to be clear whether if the question raised in legal different and question raised in norm of banking practice.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, you said FATF is not mandatory for non-members.
Definitely.
I think I don't agree with you guys.
Okay.
The reason why, because the principle of the FATF apply to 198 countries. And they are not necessary to be all of them member of FATF. Some of them might be member from FSRB.
Yeah.
And there are 8 FSRB around the world.
Right.
When this FSRB established, by default, you are a member. So I think we need to clarify.
Yeah, we did actually clarify that. That's why I said if you are...
No, but no, because I'm concerned about when the question they raise.
Yeah.
Because I know about this question, what it is.
Yeah.
So therefore, our people, they should have a clear understanding.
Yeah.
Because what you are saying, I am sure if the question will raise, is this mandatory? And they will say no. That's, of course, this is depends on which interpretation.
Yeah.
If it's coming from law perspective, it's different. And if it's coming to the membership as a whole, is different.
Sure.
Membership is not necessary to be FATF member.
Yeah, you could be a member of FSRB or any...
The reason why, because this principle, as UAE, we are not a member of FATF.
You are through GCC.
Okay, we are through GCC.
Yeah.
But even through the GCC, it doesn't entitle us to be a member.
You're not a direct member.
GCC member.
Yeah, GCC
This
being
is
part of GCC, that's why you are complying with
Similarly, we are member of MENA FATF. By
Right.
default, we are member of FATF.
That's correct.
Like for instance, Jordan or your country, they are not a member of FATF,
That's correct.
but they are from the MENA region.
MENA.
And they are also. So this is very important to clarify for our colleagues
Sure.
that they can understand that their answer should be accurate. Otherwise, I think if this is good, and then they will put in their mind that's not member this, I am afraid that they won't be able to achieve what they will be.
Right, yeah. But what we did actually discuss this, right? We discussed that, the membership, that means what I meant is not a FATF member, not a member of any of the FATF bodies or regional bodies. So you are not at all one of these countries, as you properly mentioned, the 190 countries, you're not part of that. Then in this case, the recommendation for you is a best practice. It's not something which is obligatory.
Can you put from the ACAM question, what question should come as example?
We will put now.
No, because I think that's very important.
Yeah, we did. At the end of every chapter, we're putting it. At the beginning, I made an initial assessment as well. So when we finish every topic, we put, actually, in fact, after this slide, we'll start putting questions. Right, so you came at the right time. Okay, right?
Here in the IGMOT group also, you are saying that important document, it's not about ESW. Now as per after 2013 is IGMOT Charter and IGMOT Principles of Information Exchange.
You're right.
The two documents are very important.
Yeah, this are very important. Just agree with you. Thank you.
So that
And then for the sake of clarity, you clarify for them, because all member states,
Yeah.
they are member either IMF or World Bank. By default,
Sure.
this application of this recommendation apply to them.
Right.
Because IMF reflecting the merit of this recommendation, its own evaluation in Article 4 consultation and
Right.
so forth. I think this is extremely important.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, thank you very much for that wonderful addition. Yeah, thank you. Let's have some sample test questions. Ready? Yeah? Okay. Question number 9.
See?
See?
non-financial
again.
non-financial business.
DNFB, non-financial businesses and professions. So non-financial institutions, non-financial professions.
ايه بقى ايه
كده واحنا منهم
A and B. C. B لا ودي لا.
Let's take it one by one. The right answer here, of course, is A. Let's take it one by one. Internet casinos. It's a DNFBB. Real estate agents. It's a DNFBB. Dealers in precious metals and stones. DNFBB. So all those are correct. B. Money service businesses. FI. Right? Exchange houses, money remitters, check cashers. These are FIs. So here is wrong. Gatekeepers. Yes, DNFBB. Issuers of electronic money. Issuers of means of payment. So it's an FI. So here it's wrong because this one is wrong, this one is wrong. Both of them are FIs. C. Dealers in precious metals. DNFBB. Lawyers. DNFBB. Commodities future traders. FI. So C is wrong. D. Life insurance company. FI. Life insurance company. Real estate. DNFBB. Notaries. DNFBB. If they said here insurance companies only, it can be considered. But if I would choose one answer, I would still choose A. Why? Because D, we don't know which type of insurance company. Does it have life or not? So again, if they told you one option, you need to choose the best. So even if here I mentioned insurance companies only, without mentioning if it does it offer life or not, it's a vague, gray area. It could be not. But A will still be more clear. If it's insurance companies only, and they said choose more than one answer, then I can choose D. because he didn't clearly specify that it's life insurance company. Again, if he may not say life insurance company, he can tell you insurance companies offering investment-related insurance product. It's still also an FI. Okay?
I fully agree with him on you need to look at the question first.
Sure.
And understanding. And sometimes they put something that not necessary to come under non-designated financial institution.
Sure.
Now I have another question regarding recommendation.
Sure.
The ACAM has been going for a long time. Is there in their question they will tell them a recommendation of 2012 or they will leave it like this? Why? Because I don't want them to have a confusion.
They will be at the late. So by default it's 2012.
No, the reason why I said that
Mhm.
because maybe there will be a terrorist financing question.
Right.
Sometimes if it is not specified, our people they might think, okay, 40 it has nothing to do with terrorist financing or something else.
Right.
So if it come like this,
No, they need to follow the latest one, sir. They need to follow the latest one. So by default, you are following the latest one, and that's why effective July, last July, the exam and the book has been changed. So now we are following the 6th edition. The 6th edition is following the latest FATF as per the latest 2012, not the previous ones. Yeah? Okay, we'll take another question. Of course, here, as per the latest, it should be B. Previously, it was C.
But why in euros 15,000 and US it was 10,000?
It's always euros or US, depending on the currency. The same.
US was 10,000.
No, now they put it down to 10,000 in the latest update. So if I will answer this previously, I will say C. If I answer this at the latest, I will say B. Okay? But normally in the exam, they should tell you which one. They should not leave it that vague. But they would tell you that it is, for example, the which under which, if it's the latest or the previous. But normally here it would be the latest one. So here the right answer should be B, 10. Okay, 11. The right answer, yes, is C. So according to the 3rd E directive, a lawyer is obligated or obliged to report suspicion of money laundering in client relationship when? If the lawyer is representing the client in a legal matter, he will not report him. I'm already the advocate of the client. So in this case, no. So A doesn't apply. Asserting the legal position for a client, still no. But when I'm participating in a financial or corporate transaction, I'm part of that transaction, and I saw any indicators of suspicion, it is my obligation to file an STI and report the client. Obtaining information associated with a judicial proceeding, that means that he's already proven guilty and there's a proceeding, so this doesn't apply. So the customer is already proven guilty, so that's after. So in this case, of course, this one is not applicable. 12. ايه متأكدة؟ حرام عليك. فكري تاني. The right answer here is D. So it's actually available in your slides as well. Protecting the safety and soundness of the banking system, protecting the integrity of the banking system. I remember very much I told you to highlight that, remember? Okay. Mirror FATF KYC recommendation. Basel is incorporated in 1974. The FATF is 1989. They cannot mirror them because they were older, and normally nobody will put in their objective is to mirror somebody else. No organization will come and say, I want to imitate somebody else. Each one of them has different objectives, they have different views. So mirroring or meeting, I don't think this is the right answer. So whenever you see this mirroring or meeting, that's normally not the right thing, but it was clearly mentioned in your slides that it is protecting the safety and soundness of banks, protecting the integrity of the banking system.
Actually, we have not gone through the CFA.
You don't need to. You don't need to. That's the first trap. Actually, this is my question in the exam. I put this question. So that's the first trap that, oh, I didn't read the 19 special recommendations, so how will I answer? You do not need to. D? Daddy? B? So all of you agree on B? I will have to disagree with you. It's A. Okay, let's take it one by one. So the first trap here is the shock that you get at the beginning, that the CFATF, the Caribbean FATF 19 special recommendation. Everybody will say, oh, I didn't read that. You do not need to read that to answer this question. Let's take it one by one. So, Let's take it on one. Just give me a second.
What you have to think,
Yeah.
let me put it simplest way.
Sure.
If SRB, it is a surrogate of FAT. Since it's part of the FAT,
Right.
this recommendation might appear in Caribbean FATF, MENA FAT, APG.
That's right.
And I think
Thank you for that. That's right.
So don't get scared that
Yeah. I didn't read the 19 special recommendations, so I cannot answer.
because the FSRB itself is a surrogate.
Sure. That's right.
Whether they call it recommendation in maybe Caribbean and Nigeria recommendation in another. So this is very important. If you do
True.
that, you come to that.
You can apply, exactly. So do not limit the number of specific predicate offenses for money laundering. That's 100% correct. That's why, as I said, you could do one crime, you can be convicted with so many crimes. Like if you do tax evasion, you'll be convicted with tax evasion, fraud, and money laundering. So there is no limit. We cannot limit it to one or two crimes. If you look at Bernard Madoff, he has been sentenced 150 years in jail. Total, punishment. So there is no limit on the number of the predicate crimes. So this is
It depends what you need to do, because if they go with the list of 21 predicate offense, so you might also adapt yourself to go to our law as UAE law. We put all felony and misdemeanor, mean all crime. But also think about if ATF model, which they say you can put a list of 21 crime, then you are going to come to the answer clearly.
right. Great. So number one is correct. 2, criminalize conspiracy or association to engage in money laundering. That should be criminalized, right? Number 3, indicate whether it is relevant that a predicate offense may have been committed outside the local jurisdiction. If a person has committed a crime outside UAE, that makes him still a criminal. So we will not say that, well, this crime is not criminalized here, but he still is criminalized. There is a predicate crime, that means there is money laundering. 4 is very, very tricky.
Avoid.
And actually, if I change only 2 letters, it will be correct.
Avoid.
Avoid criminalizing money laundering offender. If I said offender, 4 would be correct. But here, avoid criminalizing money laundering offenses in which the offender lacks actual knowledge of a criminal connection to fund. So that plays on the Palermo definition of money laundering, where they said knowing. But here the offender should know the connection of the asset to the illegal source. In this case, the offender will not be criminalized, but the offense has taken place. There is an offense for money laundering, but because he acted in good faith, he lacked knowledge of the connection of that asset to the criminal source. The offender will not be criminalized, but the offense has taken place. See? Just a couple of letters. Instead of offenses, I put it offender. 4 will be correct. That's why you need to be reading very, very carefully. Yeah. That's my question. So the 2 traps here, the first thing is Caribbean FATF 19 special recommendation. Then instead of offender, I put it offenses. Then if you don't fall in the first trap, you fall in the second one. Right? So just I'm showing you how the questions can be very tricky. That's my question in the exam. Okay? 14, it is D, daddy. Okay? So the FATF FOID recommendations say that countries should, let's take it one by one, not allow BR shares. They said BR shares are not forbidden. Not and forbidden. That means they are allowed. So don't get confused. Not allowed, that means it's allowed. Not forbidden means they are allowed. So A is wrong. Gather statistics on STRs, prosecutions, and convictions on property frozen, seized, and confiscated, and on mutual legal assistance, but not necessarily on other international requests for cooperation. Last line made it wrong. C, consider the feasibility of a system where banks and other financial institutions and intermediaries would report currency transactions without indicating a minimum fixed amount. That's nonsense. You have a CTR, there's a threshold for the CTR. So without a threshold, how can you report to you? That means you're going to report everything. That's not correct. D, not approve the establishment. So if I'm establishing a relationship and I discover that this bank is a shell bank, I should not approve this relation because the FATF clearly said no shell banks, no correspondency relationship with a shell bank. Or accept the continued operation of a shell bank. What if I already discover that one of the banks that already I'm dealing with is a shell bank? I should exit this relation. I should not accept the continuity of the relation of the shell bank. So D is the right answer. Okay? How is it? Very good? Very good. I'm very happy to hear that. Great. So that chapter is requiring lots of reading, memorization, understanding. So you need to spend some good time on this chapter. It's actually one of the very important chapters.
You are not asking any question. That means you have great understanding of what
He asked. Actually, Saeed and Ram have been asking lots of questions, which is really good. If you ask, that means you are with me. If you don't ask, it's two options. Either the subject is very easy, which I don't think so, or it's very difficult, to the extent that you don't ask at all. So, no, they have been very interactive. All the group is really perfect. They have all been interactive, and inshallah, all of them will pass on the first attempt.
I am optimistic that all they will pass.
Inshallah.
That they read carefully,
Yeah,
they will answer.
sure, sure. No, I'm very, very optimistic that all of them will pass on their first attempt. And they should be registering with us on the advanced level after that. We have an advanced level covering.
Maybe a little bit, the lady will beat the gentleman.
Ladies are always more clever. I have to admit. Ladies are always very clever. Okay. Thank you very much for your time.